Shall we begin? Let's begin now.
All right, everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Frankly Francisco podcast. Today, my guest is an author of The Architect Way. His name is Daryl Knaus. He is an author. He is a technologist. He is amazing. He just he has his finger in the pulse of everything when it comes to technology and business, which is great because that's the field that I'm in myself for my everyday life. So this should be an interesting conversation. How we doing today, Daryl?
We're doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
No problem. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell my audience a little bit about yourself, what you do, who you are, and we'll get into the book here in a moment.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I'm a technologist, also an author. I think I'm a technologist first. I've been doing that for about 25 years. Started off as a software developer, moved into roles as a technical director, and eventually found my passion with solution architecture, which is sort of a technical product development role. And I worked at marketing agencies for a bunch of years, and then eventually transitioned into working at some pretty big companies like Activision and Amazon. Work there focused on building consumer engagement solutions, working with tons and tons of data, lots and lots of users. I really got to experience being on the other side of the fire hose when it comes to all those things. And like I said, it's a passion for me, and I've studied it for the full 25 years. And over that time, I've started to develop some tools and some ideas that I think other folks might find helpful. And when they approach both technology and then also a little bit of that hybrid of spending a work life in technology and a home life as a technologist, and how to have a set of beliefs and a philosophy that can enrich your life, I guess is the angle.
That's amazing though, because technology is always changing. Like, from what you did 20 years ago, it's not the same thing as to what you're doing now. When I first started using computers, I mean, you had we used to call it the wizard. It was green, the green background and the block
Yeah,
the block numbering. So
it was a
took
little blinky.
right.
Picture.
It,
Yeah.
it took forever to get on. It took forever to get online and do something.
Yeah.
So how do you keep up with that? Like, is it new training that you have to take? Do you have to keep yourself with courses? How do you keep up? Because technology is always changing, and the way it's
Mhm.
changing, sometimes people get left behind because it doesn't get easier; it gets more complicated. Some people tell me it's more, zeros and ones, but we both know it's more than that. So how do
Yeah.
you keep up with the Joneses when it comes to technology?
I think part of it is being curious and interested, and I think uh, for folks like myself who are at that sort of architect level, which is systems thinking and deploying technologies into companies and thinking about the way things work together, there's a little bit of reconciling the idea of being a specialist versus a generalist. And when you're a generalist, you'll naturally have your head up and see the landscape and hopefully see technologies as they emerge. You'll catch wind of it, staying up to date with the journals and the news as it comes through. I have found that I have a very particular itch that's really only scratched by hands-on work. And so the AI stuff I think is amazing. First thing when ChatGPT API came out, I was like, hey, what can you do with that API? Spent a day kind of poking around at it. And so, um, it's true you're not going to catch everything. And that's part of the nature of technology. I think one of the things that you can do is develop an eye for where there's something real versus something that may just be a fad and something that'll come and go that might not necessarily deserve your attention. So I think
So
that's part of it.
So that passion you have for technology, I mean, how do you keep stoking that fire? Though I know you're curious, but there's got to be something that's besides the curiosity that's keeps you going and keeps that fire burning in you. Because after a while, sometimes you people get tired of being in the same field for long periods of time. If it's something that's you know uh, something that's always ever evolving, and sometimes it's hard to keep up. So how do you stoke that fire? Continuously stoke that fire.
Technology has an interesting way of, revealing itself and and becoming interesting. I think, look, if after 20 years of working in technology, AI pops up, if you're not interested in that, if you don't think that's amazing and are super curious about that, maybe technology, I would argue, might not be where your passion lies, and I think that that's fine. But I think that's one of the things that I love about the field and about going deep into it and learning and being hands-on is that I think, like you mentioned, going back to days of DOS and blinking cursors and dial-up modems to just the crazy, amazing, cool things that we can do today, it just in our pocket. I think it's for someone who, like myself, who I think also thinks about the bigger picture and philosophies and the way the world works. There's just an awe that I think comes with the advance of technology. We're just in pretty amazing times right now.
So
I find it difficult to not be super passionate, actually.
And I'm glad you brought that philosophy up, because I want to talk about the book, The Architect Way. You actually use philosophy as a way of channeling that for your passion. Talk a little bit about that. Tell me about the book. Tell me how you blend those two, technology and philosophy, together, which helps businesses in general do what they do now.
Absolutely. So the book is it's called The Architect Way. It's Requirements for Universal Framework. The format of the book is a adaptation of the Tao Te Ching, which is a Taoist book written a couple millennia ago, and it is a chapter by chapter rewording of the ideas into modern tech terms and technology. And so I talk a little bit about how the idea evolved, and it might shed some light on how that might be useful. I mentioned I've worked at Amazon for many years and other companies before that. And most of the companies that I've worked at have had pretty well-defined and mature corporate cultures that inform how stuff is done and how things are built. I left Amazon and went to Canva and worked at Canva for a little bit. Canva, the desktop publishing software that's really making a lot of headway these days. And I found a completely, almost polar opposite culture from what was at Amazon, which was Amazon being very prescriptive and document oriented and mature in its processes, versus Canva, which was very much driven by the intuition of the leaders and had a much more fluid culture. And I experienced a bit of cultural whiplash going between those two organizations, and found that as a builder of stuff, there had to be a common set of beliefs and principles and I guess virtues that you could apply to the technologies that could apply to both situations and be useful. And so that was about a year ago, and kind of coming out of that experience, it occurred to me that I should probably document that, especially given the fact that what I found those principles to be were very tightly aligned with Taoist ideas, which I'd also separately in my personal life been exploring for the past 20 years as well. And so as those, as my life as a technologist and my interest in Taoism evolved over the years, they slowly began to overlap into each other and produced this set of ideas that I found very, very helpful when confronted with situations that were very unknown, different cultures, different corporate cultures, different environments. And so that's the book is as an adaptation of the Tao Te Ching. If you read through it, I think some of the ideas about how to make trade-off decisions and think about where to make your investments in technology come through, and hopefully readers will get a better sense of decision making and how to make better decisions through this process.
All right. So with wordplay, when it comes to the book, how long did that take you? How long did it take you to be able to convert what those philosophies were into your own words and put pen to paper? That's not an easy thing. Writing a book, it never is, but you're mixing two different things. So I mean, wordplay has to be very important, because you want to put it in a way where people will understand what you're saying at the same time that relates to those philosophies that you're pulling from.
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to be true to the original intention of those chapters that you're adapting, while also conveying that new information. The process, like some of these things, this is probably not an unusual process for many folks. You start real slow, and then eventually, once you find your rhythm, you move real fast. So I think it took a few months to really land on what what it looks like when you say talk about ideas of connectivity and interconnectedness in a Taoist way, where you're talking about the water and the river and how it flows, and mapping that into familiar ideas and technology around how data flows and how you should think about where you send data. So um, started, I think the whole process took maybe about 8 months, and of that there was probably 2 months of it that was super intense. I will say, the Tao Te Ching is not a long book. It's 81 chapters, and so um, the first few were the hardest, because they really, the format of the book is, it lays out a lot of foundational principles up front, and once you've got those foundational principles established, then the rhythm starts to play itself out, and it has kind of a recursive feeling where those initial ideas show up again later in the book. So yeah,
So,
that was how that put it.
so have you find yourself now with that book out? Have you been helping companies now? Have you been able to, share your principles with some of these companies and try to change the culture and the way they do things to help the business thrive?
Yeah, well, right now I'm in a bit of an evangelist phase, and so yeah, some of the ideas before they had fully formalized. The book's relatively new; it just came out about a month ago, and so um, I think that there's an opportunity to build on the ideas in the book into a little bit more formal of a training and a way to communicate the ideas. However, most of the general ideas are ones that I have found helpful. And as a leader in the organizations that I've been in and the companies I've worked with, talking about balance and simplicity as virtues of the systems that we're building, while not talking about them in explicitly Taoist terms, have still been helpful. And so, yeah, definitely beneficial for lots of folks.
Yeah, I mean, with me, technology's in my everyday life. I stare in front of a screen for 8 hours a day. I deal with different systems day in and day out, and they're always trying to improve technology. They're always trying to improve the way we do things, and nothing's ever perfect with it. And it's always in adapting to it. So some days the system might not be working, so you have to find a way around that. With the philosophy and the technology that you have, it has to be some way we have to be able to combine that and move forward with the things we do to make life easier, because it can be stressful, like when you're sitting in front of a screen for 8 hours a day, dealing with tech and dealing with people at the same time, because you have angry people
Yeah.
calling in like, why is my system not working, why is this not doing that? Your book can present kind of a functional way of trying to traverse some of this stuff without people panicking, which is good. It doesn't matter if the book's been only out for a month though, because it only takes is the right person to read that book, and the minute they read that book and they say, "Oh, we need to get
Yeah.
this guy in so he can
Yeah.
consult to help us," so it's always a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. I've definitely gotten some great feedback, and so there's some traction in the ideas for sure. Um, One of the interesting aspects of it is the idea of a universal framework, and so hopefully what comes across is the layers at which the ideas of interconnectedness and adaptability and balance and simplicity, like the four main ideas that we're talking about on technology, there's a way in which those apply and at layers. So down at the ground level, when you're building a system, those are four ideas that you can use as a lens through which you can evaluate the code that you're writing or the ways that you're integrating. But at the next level up, they also apply to the ways in which your organization is structured, and you're talking with folks and you're working with stakeholders. Recognize that everybody's connected in certain ways, and you need to be adaptable. Sometimes simplicity, most times simplicity is going to rule the day as the best solution. And then it goes further. There's another layer at which you are a human being that walks into the office and has a job to do, and you have a personal life that's connected to that job. And uh, finding the balance. Talk a lot about work-life balance. There's a sometimes simplicity is the way that gets managed, and so there's a theme of a universal framework, which in other terms could be like a practical philosophy or a type of thing that you can carry with you that that works in your life broadly, not just at the level of technology. And so the moments in which we're frustrated, if you can rely on or evoke this philosophy and these core ideas, hopefully that can help you find the right balance. And one of the great things about taking this approach, I think, is that you don't have to carry around with you lots of philosophies. The ideas are relatively straightforward. They work really well when you put them into practice, and they apply, like I said, at a few different layers, and so they can be helpful in many different aspects of your life, not just the building of technology piece.
Now, when you say universal framework, so this is when you bring that up, if you bring that up to companies, how do you bring it up to them? Because people like, especially major corporations that deal with technology, they want things to be in-house. They don't want to
Yeah.
share. They don't want to share what they know. They don't want to share the technology. Everything stays in-house. How do you bring that up? How would you bring that up to companies? How would you tell them, listen, this is not just for one company. This is how we should be running all things when it comes to technology to make things smoother for everyone. How do you
Mhm.
sell that to somebody? How do you explain that to these major corporations? Because you know how major corporations are. They want things close to the vest. They don't want to share what they know because it gives them the edge.
Yeah. Well, a universal framework in this context is a way of operating. It's and a way of thinking about the work that you do, and it doesn't have to be in contrast with your your priorities when it comes to, um, for example, having IP that you own that you want to develop and that you don't want to share outside of that with other companies. Um, it's how do you take that idea of what is valuable to you and and optimize the development of that idea and optimize your organization that you're going to build around the development of that idea and optimizing the go-to-market strategy that you have from with your organization and the idea that you have. Um, and so it doesn't have to necessarily be in contrast. Although I would also argue for folks that maybe are a little less uh, committed to the idea of building their own solutions and maybe looked at third parties to help the same universal framework that works in optimizing your organization around owned IP can also help think about where is the value in the stuff that you've got versus the stuff that a third party vendor can provide, and what are the upsides. And when you think through the I'll go back to the four main principles of interconnectedness, adaptability, balance, and simplicity. You can use that as a lens to evaluate your investments and determine whether or not do I need to put a whole development team on building new stuff, or can I just go ahead with and use the vendor for this thing that might be low risk? It's the Venn diagram of stuff that they do and what we care about, or is there's not enough overlap to be concerned, and so you can pick those kinds of things. So again, a universal framework, it wouldn't be universal if it didn't have that sort of applicability across all of the different corporate interests.
What I love though about this is it goes from the ground up. From, the people working to how we deal with our customers to how we deal with, creating, new technology within the company. So it's the layers that I appreciate, that I think most people would appreciate, because you can essentially adapt this to any business out there as long as you're following those steps that you're letting people know about. And some people, the older they get, some people don't want to adapt to that technology. They have an
Yeah,
old way of thinking. But
yeah,
I think if they follow these steps of yours and they follow the philosophies that you're trying to offer them, I think it makes things easier. It's just sometimes you have companies that have been around for so long, they like the way they do things, they're not going to change. But now you have a younger generation is more tech savvy, who would be willing to follow this philosophy and help themselves become more successful because they're going to do it differently.
yeah. I think that there's an exercise that's required to translate it into legacy speak, if you will, like for the older companies that have a certain way of operating that they've become attached to. And my view of it is usually if anybody's been in the business long enough and who has built stuff or worked with other technologies and can identify something that works, they look at it and they say like, yeah, that was a great tech, or like that was a great project that we did, or there was some great software that we used. and you really pressed on like, okay, well, what were the main attributes of that system or that software that you liked about it, and really boiled it down. Most good systems operate in a state of harmony and in a state of sustainability. They last. They integrate well with stuff. They integrate well with the user. There's a real connection there, and they sustain themselves over time. And those are the core themes that the Taoist principles and that this philosophy really aims for. Like those are the North Star of attributes for most systems and things. You want your organization to operate in harmony and to last, and you want your company to be to last many years, and you want the software you build that to be stuff that will have an impact and last. And you want these things to the operating in harmony is that idea of them being fluid and flowing with the needs of the users and with your own intentions. And so if you're talking to someone who's kind of old school in their thinking, and you can get on the same page about what good systems look like, then you can say, cool, there's a model for going forward with this. And that's what these ideas represent, is if we're all on the same page about the sort of self-evident nature of good systems, then you can just try this idea, this lens, and think to yourself about balance and simplicity and interconnectedness when you go forward. I think some light bulbs go off, and so I found that I've been able to get a little bit of traction with folks that have relatively mature ways of thinking about things and have lots of experience and their own set of ideas about what works and what doesn't. You can still agree on what are the core virtues and ideals, and then from there you can sort of it becomes natural how the universal framework lines up with that.
So with what you do you think, when we talked about AI earlier, do you think AI is going to play a big part in what you do right now? Is it going to help evolve what you're doing? You say you've been playing around with AI. What have you found with AI that's intrigued you the most, and what you think is going to be useful for what you're doing in the future?
So at the moment, AI is definitely a content accelerator, right? Like that's probably the number one thing that it's bringing to the market, is the ability to for creators to create faster and quicker. The newer versions that are able to analyze documents and data and summarize and produce outputs, those advances are happening very quickly. What I would love to see is the evolution of AI to the point at which you can put in a set of system requirements or information about a system or an organization, and let AI help you understand where, or highlight where there's disharmony, and highlight where there's opportunities for balance, things to simplify. And I think even at the moment, and even now, you can sort of train it to say, evaluate this document that I'm about to, this set of requirements, find opportunities to optimize what features don't appear to add value, and that kind of thing. And it'll give you answers, and and I think to that extent, it's helpful. And so, at least with the relationship to the work that I'm doing, I think as an assistant into this way of thinking to help validate some of the ideas, I think it's really useful. Outside of that, I think just the idea of what it can do for education is just amazing. I think the energy sector has a huge opportunity to improve on it. I mean, it's a new world. It's a whole new way of approaching things. So
Yeah, and it's always going to be ever evolving. So moving forward, what's the future looking like for you? What's ahead for you? What are your plans with this book? Do you plan on trying to do a tour? Do you plan? What are your plans for this? How do you want to get this book out to the world? What are you planning on doing for yourself for the future with this?
well, I'll keep building systems, and then also with this book, I think there's an opportunity to extract some of the individual pieces of learnings and kind of blow them out a little bit, dive deeper into what the meanings of each individual sort of idea and chapter could be. And so, I think there's an opportunity for both moderated workshops in which we sort of explore the ideas, as well as just longer form content that folks can read at their own pace that dives a little bit deeper into them. And so I think I'm in an evangelist role right now, and trying to get folks to read and appreciate the ideas that are communicated. And as an evangelist, I think the path to the apostles will reveal itself.
So where can people actually find this book? Where are the areas on the internet where they can go to purchase this book, to read about this book, to read about yourself as well?
So not surprisingly, it's on Amazon. And you can go to thearchitectway.com and it will redirect you to where you can get it at Amazon. I'm also putting out updates about the content and various insights on LinkedIn for folks who want to connect with me there. I also have a ton of side passions, including the technologist and author. And so Knaus.net is the homepage where it's sort of a portfolio of various other projects that more or less align with the themes that we're talking about. So those are probably the best ways to reach me.
Nice. Listen, it's always good when you find your passion in something and you can procure it and get it out to the world for everybody to see. Sometimes it takes, like you said, your book's only been out for a month. It doesn't matter. You're going to change somebody's life. It only takes one person to read that book, and you'll change their frame of thinking and how they do things moving forward, which is always a good thing. It's always positivity and everything. You just have to look for it. Like you say, your job is you're out there now trying to get people to understand your philosophy and understand the philosophy of the book to make their life, not just their business life, but their regular life easy as well. I mean, they go hand in hand each other. You can't own a business and be stressed out 24 hours a day worrying about how the business is going to run. If your business is running smooth, that's going to translate to you having a smoother, off work type of life, which I think it's the work-life balance, which everybody, reaches for. We're in a world now where, they want you to be in office. You have to be loyal to the company, even though the companies are not loyal to you. So it's one of those things where we have to strike some harmony. And if your book can help people do that, whether it be management or, the worker, it'd be a great thing.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for that. That's, that's the hope. And if there's, even one person goes through the book and picks up the ideas and comes out on the other end and says, hey, look, I could move faster and build better systems. I'm more at ease in my job. I feel more authentic because I don't have to balance, so much, conflicting ideas. I think that's amazing. And that idea of approaching it with clarity and authenticity is really a core aspect of it. And anybody who reads through it and gives me that kind of feedback, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, I listen, I love your passion. I love the fact that you're still locked in, and with, the evolution of technology and it's ever changing, you're keeping up, and you're out there trying to help people structure their businesses to the point where it can run smoothly, where, things can help each other. But that takes time and that takes patience. And I hope your book blows up, man, and creates a Shangri-La of peace throughout all these these companies out here. Especially, you have some of these companies that are still going to be who they are. But I'm glad it's out there. I'm glad it's something that people can grasp and read and try to understand, to balance themselves out with their company and their business. Dara, thank you for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it. You are a plethora of knowledge when it comes to tech. Just keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to leave you with what I leave everybody with. If you found your purpose, live it. I appreciate you coming on the show. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks a bunch.